Good morning. Let's start the November 15th Park and Tree Committee meeting, 8:30 Wednesday morning. We can rise and do a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Hi, Kelsey.
Can we initiate our roll call?
Yep. Lena Tucker. Present. Wally Shreves.
Present.
Nancy Patton.
Here.
Bob Dalton did call, say he would be unable to attend. And then Deborah Sue.
I'm here.
All right. We have a quorum.
Thank you. If anyone has any additional time reports to send in to Angela, please get those into her via email so there's a hard copy of them. Please take a moment to review the meeting minutes. Once reviewed, please note any changes or a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
Can I have a vote for approval of yay?
Aye.
Yay. Yay.
All opposed, same sign. The meeting minutes are approved. I'd like to take this time for any public comments. Nobody in the room, but if somebody's online would like to ask something. I think we're good on the public comment.
Yep.
So old business, Northside Park Arbor Day celebration, the flyer.
Chair, we need to go back up to responsibilities. That's a agenda item.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
So as you'll notice, you guys have a binder. Blair's going to go through a PowerPoint, but the binders are inside our the volunteer forms that I need you all to fill out and get back to me before your next activity, outdoor activity. And then right behind those is the schedule for the year. So those are all your meeting schedules and the events that we have scheduled so far and the days they are on. One correction I need to make. I was listening to the minutes and the Sankey Park dedication. You all said in the minutes that the 16th, July 16th was a Saturday. That's actually a Sunday. So July 15th is a Saturday. So on here you'll see it's the 15th instead. So I just wanted to make you aware that I made that change. The rest of the binder is actually for your information. So you'll see the second tab says Robert's Rules. Those are the rules that we follow for all of our committee meetings, council meetings, commission meetings. There's a simplified, but in the front of this, it says Park and Tree Committee quick reference. I took all those and made a quick reference of how we run through our meetings. And the reason for that is it is important that we follow the agenda. There may be items on new business that are related to old business, but I can say for me taking minutes, it's nice for us to stick to the agenda so that when I'm doing minutes that we're not bouncing all over the place. And so to be able to review that agenda ahead of time and be able to go through it. So I did meetings, just as a reminder. One of the items that we haven't really gone, we don't get a lot of guests, is, and I want to bring that up, is when we do have public comment or a guest that's going to speak to one of our items, you need to ask them to come up. They need to state their name and their address, and then speak into the microphone. So everybody needs to come up and sit in the chair so that we can hear them and so that it can be recorded on minutes. So that's one thing we don't do a lot in this meeting because we don't always have a lot of guests. But anybody that's going to speak, they need to come up here, not speak from the audience. So that's one thing I meant to bring up because we don't do it very often, but occasionally we have had people come in. So other than that, I will let you guys read through this stuff. These are just the policies. The Sweet Home Chapter 210050, those are your powers and duties. That's in our municipal code, just as a reminder. I've never made binders for Park and Tree, and I thought it might be handy so you guys have the materials.
That's nice.
Deborah, when you get a chance, you can come pick yours up. I've already talked to Bob also, and he's going to watch this video. He had an appointment today, so he'll watch through the video, the training, and then come pick his up. So I'm going to hand it over to Blair. I just wanted to let you know what your binders are for. So
Thank you.
So just one thing on that comment, that when you went through this, our our duties and responsibilities, I think that needs to be reviewed at some point, because I went through it several times. Oh, you're going to cover that?
Going to talk about that?
That's why I brought it up.
Yep. I'm here to anticipate your needs. All right. So Angela, staff has talked about kind of committees in general throughout the city, and there's a push to add some committees at the council level on a couple of things. And so as we've talked about how these are structured, we've kind of noticed that we do need to have some level of training on an annual basis that kind of reminds people of how these things work, how they should work, because as a city, we have a lot of constraints on the way we operate, and we need to make sure that our committees are operating along with those rules as well. So today I just prepared this little PowerPoint with some basic training on some of this will be familiar, some of this will be repetitive, but some of it might be new. And so we can, if you have questions, please interrupt and bring it up. But I just wanted to first go over the city organization overall, the roles of the council, the committee, and staff. Then we'll talk a little bit about meetings law and running meetings in general. Talk about budget. We'll talk about procurement, because those are the main things where we have a lot of restraints on the way we operate. So first off, city organization. Sweet Home citizens you have there at the top, they elect the city council. The city council appoints the city manager, the city attorney, and the municipal judge. And the city council also appoints committee members. And then the city manager oversees all city staff and runs the operations of the city. And so you see there kind of a double arrow between city committees and city staff. Staff supports the committees, but it's more of a what's the word, lateral connection than it is top down. So roles, the city council is elected by citizens. They, like I said, they appoint city manager, municipal judge, and city attorney. They adopt the annual budget, including capital improvements. They appoint members of city committees, including the Planning Commission and the Park and Tree Committee. And they adopt new ordinances or amend current ordinances as allowed under the city charter and state statute. Park and Tree Committee is governed by Sweet Home Municipal Code Chapter 2.10, City Committees. The committee serves at the pleasure and in service to the City Council. It has some specific duties, and this is kind of a paraphrased version, so you'll find more detail in the code. But these are the main things that it covers. There's a tree inventory that's specifically listed in code. It tasks the committee with developing and recommending tree species lists and tree ordinances and policies. You are to advise the Planning Commission on landscape design, street trees, plantings, and protection of natural vegetation. That hasn't come up for a while, but there's no reason why it couldn't. You are to make recommendations to the council regarding beautification of public property and rights of way. You are, and that's, we've discussed recently, I think, the beautification committee and their role, and we see that there's definitely a more active role that this body can be taking there and is tasked with taking in that area. You are to promote public information regarding trees. You are to develop a Parks Capital Development Program, and I'll get more on that when we talk about budget. You are to recommend recreation programming. We don't really have any recreation programs right now, mostly due to lack of budget, but that doesn't mean we can't recommend some, and if the money works out at some point, we can implement those. And likewise, you're to recommend a recreation operating budget. You're to meet at least 4 times a year. We've been meeting lately every month. I think prior, maybe a year ago, we were meeting every other month or something like that. So it's kind of as needed by the duties. And then there's other duties as assigned by the council. City staff. We are here to enforce ordinances as directed by the city manager. We are to provide city services as directed by the city manager. We are to purchase necessary materials and equipment as permitted by the city budget and as directed by the city manager under our procurement rules that have been adopted by the city council and are also governed by state statute. And then we have other duties as assigned by the city manager. All right, so that's roles. Any questions on those? Okay. That's one of the things about these meetings that back on the roles, as you notice, we completely are responsible to reporting to the city manager, who then reports to the city council. And so anytime that staff has direction or is tasked with any work, it has to come through that hierarchy. And so it can be awkward at times when we are working with committees trying to figure out, okay, you guys are making a recommendation, we need to make the call on whether staff can do it at the same time. And so we have to have that conversation as to whether we have the resources or the direction from our supervisors on whether we can go ahead and do it or not. And sometimes that means we can't immediately make a decision on any course of action, but we have to go back and check and see if it's possible. And so that's kind of the constraints that we're under as staff members.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go to a city council meeting, I know that each council member serves on a committee,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't heard, don't go to a lot of city council meetings, but like for Trask, I haven't heard him actually give a report on our committee.
He's reported in the past about the
I know he
Park and
has,
Street
but I mean, lately I haven't. So I was wondering, so then you take it from there, Kelsey, from what we do, and you report to the city council?
Reports on every item that a committee discusses. If there are action items that are then coming to me through the committee and from staff, we will then work on those particular action items, and as staff will determine if this is something then that we're taking forward to council for approval. So some items won't ever need to go to council, right, because there's something that we can just manage in-house. Other items, particularly if it's something that we have to determine a budget for or needs council authority, will of course come to council.
I don't necessarily mean get approval for something, but just to give I've served on boards before, and we always have a representative for some group, and then we give a report to, because I don't know if our city council knows everything that all the committees are doing. That's just, I'm not saying they don't, but just curious.
So the council, every council member is assigned to various committees, some of which are city committees and some of which are broader regional committees, state stuff. And it is the responsibility of each council member to keep the others apprised of what's going on in their respective areas. And so staff doesn't normally get involved in that. I have heard Councilor Trask in the past report on what the Park and Tree Committee is doing. And so certainly that gets reported on more than things like the solid waste committee. But it's not, it may not be as regular as, it's not like an every single meeting thing.
I just wonder how they find out about what everybody's doing.
Well, either they ask or it's something that we're already publicizing on some other matter. Now, the primary ways that that the council is informed of what's going on is through budget requests, right? Through you're tasked with recommending those the budgets for capital improvements and for recreation programming, and that is certainly something that is reported on an annual basis. Of this is what the committee is recommending. So beyond that, you know, if anytime we're going outside of or there's a desire to go outside of what we have budgeted or outside of what you know, the roles that you already have, that you've already been tasked with, that would be something to approach the council with and get their input and blessing on.
I like all the councilmen. I have no problem with any of them, and I love trash. So I just wondered how they get the whole committee, city council gets what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Well,
all.
and to be sure, these meetings, and we'll talk about meetings next. The minutes and the recordings of these meetings are posted on the website. Anyone who wants to know more detail, we have all the information available, and we often encourage counselors and the public to take a look at the minutes, take a look at these meetings in general, and keep up to date on what's going on. We notice them, and they're public meetings, so they're everybody's business.
Cool.
And I will state that there have been times that other council members have asked me questions too about various committees, and will have read the minutes and so forth. So there is communication. Could we have more communication? Always.
Mhm.
But all of those things are published.
Good job.
All right, so Angela talked a little bit about meetings, her needs when it comes to meetings. Just a few things that you're probably already aware of, but to recap. Anytime a quorum of the committee meets, it constitutes a public meeting. And public meetings have to be advertised. We don't have the option of meeting behind closed doors unless there's, you know, council can do executive sessions or something like that, but committees typically don't have that flexibility. The agenda for the meeting should be set by the chair, and staff is here to assist with the setting of that agenda. We are required to keep minutes of all public meetings. And so when we talk about the Robert's Rules of Order, a simplified version of them is fine. That makes keeping minutes much easier. When we talk about inviting any comments to be at the microphone and have them state their name and address for the record, those kinds of things, that really helps a lot when it comes to keeping minutes. Orderly meetings, one person speaking at a time and being called on by the chair or to be recognized by the chair, that process might seem overly formal and restrictive, but it is enormously helpful when it comes to actually keeping track of minutes and keeping track of what's going on, because it's you'd find it surprising if you go back to a recording of a meeting and try to actually write down what's going on. It's really astonishing how difficult it can be to keep track of who said what, who proposed what was the actual decision that was made, and so forth. So we just ask for your help in keeping track of those things. Public meetings don't mean public participation. This is this is something I wish we could get into the heads of all citizens, because there's certainly a feeling in our country these days that anytime you go to a public meeting, you're allowed to say whatever you want to say for as long as you want to say it, and that's just really not true. This is a business meeting, and we invite public comments at specified times during the agenda, but that doesn't mean that they get to weigh in on everything that they want to weigh in on, and that is. Wally, sorry, but you're the chair, and you get to do that. You get to control it. So with great power comes great responsibility. Park and Tree Committee meetings are meetings of the committee and not staff. So we are here to present. We are present to report on relevant activities and answer questions and hear your recommendations on things. But we're not. This is not our meeting. This is your meeting. And so that's why you set the agenda. And if one of you has an item that you want added to an agenda, you need to communicate that to the chair, and he'll have it see to it that it's done. So, yeah.
And just to add to a couple things, so the first item, any quorum of a committee meets, it constitutes a public meeting. So if you are all going to meet in Northside Park, I need to know ahead of time, preferably 7 days. You get your package usually 7 days before the meeting, so that's the typical notice time is 7 days. The other part of it is also if you would like to, our agendas don't change much. You all like to have place marks and have the stuff on there, so we don't change it very often. However, if you do want to see changes, I do need to have it before that 7-day period, because typically I need to have your packets out by the Wednesday before. And so if you would like to see changes, get them to Wally, and Wally can get them to me if there's something added on there. Like I said, typically we don't change ours, but those are just 2 items I just wanted to make sure. So it needs to be noticed 7 days in advance, so that's when I need to know, is before that time.
So I have a question about that. So there's been a few times like Trask has gone with somebody someplace to check something out. I know that sounds vague, but you know, can you follow me on this one? Yeah. So is that, I know that's not a quorum, but that's part of, we're working on, that's committee stuff. So
there's nothing wrong with one member of the committee, or even 2, since it doesn't quite constitute a quorum. There isn't anything wrong with members of the committee doing their own investigation on any items related to your jobs, to your role. The only time that gets to be of an issue is, 1, when there's enough people involved that it becomes a quorum. That's an issue. Or 2, when another time it might be an issue is if, say one person goes off and says, goes off investigating a structure to be placed in the park, and then says, hey, I found this one, tells one person, I found this one, I really think we should recommend it, and then tells another person, hey, I found this thing, I really think we should recommend it, and then that person tells another person, hey, we found this structure, we really think we should recommend going with this. Well, now you've involved a quorum of the committee, and under Oregon public meetings laws, you've basically had a meeting, even though you didn't really intend to have a meeting. And so we do need to be careful with how we handle committee business, and it does need to be handled in a meeting. That being said, your individual investigation of things is not a problem. The only problem is when it becomes communicated to a quorum of the committee, and then all of a sudden you've had people kind of make a decision on something without actually meeting. And that's where a committee is getting to.
So then
trouble.
what would you do instead of each person talking to that? We would have to call the city and tell you guys that we need to talk about it.
That's the thing is you can do all sorts of things as long as we have notice, and as long as we advertise it as a possible meeting of the quorum of the committee. If you have multiple people who all want to, say you all want to tour a park in a different city to get some ideas, and you've heard great things about it and you want to all visit it together to talk about it. Well, then we could say, well, we advertise that as a possible quorum of the committee. We state the date, we state the time, and the purpose of that meeting, and then you're fine. Because if anybody in the public wanted to go check on you or to see if any decisions were being made, they would know about it, and they'd be allowed to show up too if they felt like it. So,
Just a curiosity. If, say, I went to look at the device, and I'm just making this up, that's going to move the Dallenberg Bridge, and I look at it, and I take a couple pictures, and I say, this thing looks pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And all I want to do is just communicate what it looks like to the committee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making a recommendation. I said I went and looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I saw. Is that a quorum?
So what I would recommend doing in that case is either saving all that information and presenting it at a committee meeting, or you can provide that information to staff, and staff would include it in a meeting packet for the next meeting, saying here's some information that we gained, and this will be talked about at the next meeting. Those are a couple ways you could.
So the answer is no, you don't send anything to the whole group. That's
I would
just a
recommend
period.
not. Yes. In fact,
I mean, that's an easier way of saying it.
whenever we send out emails to committees, and this should be common practice. It should be done right now. If it's not, we'll fix it. Let me know. Every time we send out emails to, for example, the council or the planning commission or any committee, we usually use blind carbon copy to send it all out. And so you might receive an email that has no other emails on it. It
Yeah.
just has the email that it was sent from, but it really got sent to the entire committee. The reason for that is so that you can't hit reply all. And because once you hit reply all, then you've made it a public meeting because you've automatically involved a quorum of the committee. So that's why we do that, is to try to control that. It's really frustrating, like, especially, it's not as bad at the committee level, but at the council level, it can be very frustrating because Oregon courts have looked at public meeting law and developed this thing called a serial meeting, which is basically one counselor talking to another counselor on the same subject, and that counselor then talks to another counselor on the same subject, and that counselor then talks to another counselor on that same subject. And suddenly and courts have basically said, you just had a public meeting. Mm-hmm. And the original person didn't have any intention of doing that. It's just that the next person decided to tell somebody else, and that person decided to tell somebody else. So it's I mean, it is what it is. I can't go back and change that court decision, but we have to recognize those things and abide by them. And it can be frustrating.
So how defined is that? So if we're going to meet at the city at Northside Park to do something and the time changes, can I send that out in a group text and say, hey, the time's changed,
we can,
including you?
Yeah.
And I just say, hey, we picked up stuff early, so we'll be there early.
So the best thing to do is to send it to me. I will send out a blind copy email, but I also have to do a revised notice. So I have to put it on our calendar and do a revised notice. And so, so it's best just to send it to me, and then I will immediately send it out to the group. And then that way it's covering the blind copy. That way I can do a revised. So any agenda that gets revised, even if you guys are just meeting, we put revised on there, we republish it. And so it's just best to send it directly.
And notice has been pretty short in the past for various meetings like this. I mean, you can do them 24 hours in advance if it's that short a notice. It's getting the notice out there to make people aware of it. Now, I don't recommend doing it with only 24 hours notice, but if an emergency happens or something like that, we can get the word out. At least if it's a business day, we can get the word out on something like that, and we do that on a regular basis.
So in what I'm hearing, and this is my version of which I'm sure you're used to by now. We probably should not communicate with each other outside of this meeting. Because if I say one thing to anybody that has anything to do with a park or something I saw, if they said that to one other person, that's a public meeting. So we should specifically, we only have 3 of us to make a quorum. Right. I mean, this wouldn't be hard for that to accidentally happen.
Right. It could very easily accidentally happen. You are correct. Now, the benefit is that for the most part, the stuff that we discuss when it comes to individual tree species and where in a park a tree might look best or something like that, or the number of trees or the number of plantings, usually that's not something that somebody's going to get so agitated over that they're going to sue the city. So we're in good shape. It's not like some public works procurements and stuff like that where it can get more heated and there's a lot more money involved and stuff like that. But it still is best to play it safe. I don't want to stifle the work of I don't want you to feel like you're chained down by state law or anything like that. It can feel like that, and I get that. But it's something for you to be aware of. Talking with one other person is really okay as long as it doesn't extend. So both of those people need to be aware that if they have opinions that they've shared with each other, they can't go beyond that, and it has to just really wait for a public meeting to discuss it anymore. And that's awkward and frustrating to deal with. But you could say avoid even the appearance of evil and just don't even don't even talk to each other at all outside of the meetings, and then you'd be definitely covered. Could you cross the line a little bit more and talk with one person? Probably, and you'd probably be okay. But it is something that can snowball.
Well, what I think is, I've been on this committee for a long time, so this group, we're all good friends. We move really well together. We work hard together. We get a lot of stuff accomplished. So maybe we start meeting twice a month. I don't know, but there's just so much stuff going on that I feel like I know totally where everybody's coming from in here. For you guys, for legal, for us, for Wally, for it's like But anyway,
one thing I would recommend is just make more liberal use of notifying possible quorum of the committee. If you're going to have if you say, hey, let's get together and for a work party in a park, just schedule it and then let us know. And that
within
way,
24 hours.
As long as we have 24 hours notice, preferably more than that. For this meeting, we like to have information 7 days in advance for regular meetings. If there's some other meeting that's out of the normal operation, the thing is if we're advertising a possible quorum, it doesn't necessarily mean that a meeting will happen. It just means that we think there might be enough people showing up that it might constitute that.
So I want to ask about when we planted the trees. So is that good, bad, or ugly?
That should have been noticed.
It should have been noticed. Now, we want to encourage that. It's good to have work parties to work in parks, and we want you to be involved. But we do need to know about that so that we can notice it as a possible meeting.
Well, again, because Trask was there, I know he's
and he doesn't count as a quorum member
I know,
or a committee member.
But when I always look at when he's with us and involved, I always feel like it's okay, but maybe I'm wrong.
So correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Wally is the chair. So
I
Wally
know.
is the one that you would go to, and then he can communicate with me if we don't want to go beyond a quorum. But if you guys make a decision and then just let me know, then all I have to do is put it on the notice, and I can send you all emails, times, dates, places, that type of thing. So Wally is the chairman. Counselor Trask is just the council representative. So again, he's here for reference purposes and
his attendance doesn't push you over to a quorum.
Right.
So
Right. I knew
because he's
that.
not
Yeah,
a
we
member
know
of the
that.
committee.
But what I'm saying, you've already said it, but I guess I feel like we're protected or something that he's there. I don't know how to say it.
I wouldn't say that's definitely not the case.
I know everybody's shaking their head no, so I get it.
It may be worse. Just saying.
So he's going to read these minutes. Okay, I love you, Trask. It's okay.
Any more questions on meetings? Is that
Yes. One last one.
okay?
So I'm just trying to get this through my head because some of this seems like I understand the rule. I've actually sat down and read the state rule top to bottom, front to back a year and a half ago because I was very concerned. At first I thought it was nuts. I now know that it is nuts because I read it and it makes no sense to me. So I asked, just curiosity. So I asked Nancy, what did you learn when you talked to, I lost his name. Shematica? No, the guy.
Shimmick.
Shimmick.
Robert
Yeah.
Shimmick.
Robert
Shimmick.
Mhm.
Give me
And she tells me, well, their event's starting at 12 o'clock. And I say, well, that would be nice. Then if we just did ours at 10 to 12, we wouldn't interfere with their event and we could promote theirs. Maybe they could promote ours. She says, yeah. Okay. That's just in a text message. And then I happen to run into Lena and I just say, hey, it looks like we'll just probably end up doing it at 10 instead of 11 to 2 or whatever we decided on because it's outside of that. That's
No,
not
I think there's a third part to that. So, okay, we've done our research to figure out, we already chose the date in a public meeting. So the date was chosen.
True.
And then we knew that there was this other thing. So Nancy was tasked to figure out what the time frame is. So that was last month. So technically this meeting, hey, we have the information, it's this time frame. Angela's working on the flyer. It looks like if it's 11 to 2, then we say, okay, there's our time. So I think it's back to the work party concept in gathering the individual research to help fill in a question that we had at a meeting, come
So-
back, finalize it at the next meeting.
I think one way that could make something like that work really well is that if at the meeting, if there is an assignment by the committee as a whole to one particular member to talk to someone or investigate something, and they're to report back their findings, what they can do is report their findings to staff. The staff can then send out an email with all of that information to the whole committee. And that way you don't have to wait until the next committee meeting. You can it's just one committee member fulfilling an assignment and staff disseminating that information. And that's perfectly fine. Now, once that happens, once that information has been disseminated, then it can be like, yeah, you saw the email? Yeah, I saw the email. Great. There's no problem there because that's a public record that you're commenting on, and you just making sure that everybody's on the same page. That's in that situation, that would be fine. So staff can assist with making this easier.
Okay.
But
kind of
it
relates back
starts at
to
the public meeting of making sure that it's clear who's got what assignment and that you're going to report back. And
yeah.
Any other questions? Or is it even more unclear now?
No.
Sometimes I worry about, anytime you get into state statute and all the weird things that we have to do, sometimes it can get more confusing the more you talk about it.
Like I said,
hope
it's not
the case.
it's not unclear, but I just know, that things move so fast. Like I said, I don't know, maybe we should probably meet twice a month or something. It's always, to me, it's like we don't have enough time, to get things going. There's a lot of stuff.
Well, and we can organize, the key is to make sure that we organize our meetings to be as effective as possible and to make use of our time as effectively as possible. And a lot of that is just setting the agenda and following the agenda and utilizing city staff to do that. And there's quite a bit that can be accomplished. All right. More on meetings. City Council has adopted Robert's Rules of Order for city meetings. There's a simplified version that's acceptable, and that's in your binders. Rules were developed to ensure that meetings are fair, efficient, democratic, and orderly. The chairperson leads the meetings and should follow the agenda to keep the group moving toward its goals, control the flow of the meeting by recognizing members who ask to speak, let all members speak before allowing anyone to speak a second time or before moving on to the next item, model courtesy and respect, and then when discussions get off track, gently guide the group back to the agenda. All right. And so we on Robert's Rules, we have a version there. You can get super formal with that. I don't think you necessarily need to. It's more for a committee. It's more the spirit of the law kind of thing. But it needs to be clear to anybody listening that you're following some protocol, because it makes keeping those minutes much, much easier. All right, let's talk about budget. Park and Tree Committee makes recommendations annually to the council regarding the recreation budget and capital improvements. And please note that this is capital improvements, not operations. And so the operations and operations budget are entirely under city staff and handled in a different way. And that's dependent on what annual funding we have and what resources we have available to staff. Capital improvements typically are things that you're saving up for over a period of time. They're funded by SDCs, or they're grant funded or donation funded. And so they are, there's a separate process for those, simply because of, one, how expensive they are, and two, where the money is coming from. It's usually not something that's supported by our regular revenue. The adopted budget determines what capital improvements will be made in a given year. Capital improvement budget decisions are guided by the park system master plan or other public process, such as an adopted plan for an individual park. Donations are welcome, but do not automatically increase the budget for a project. We have an adopted budget for things, and then if additional revenue that comes in to go toward that, if we didn't know about it beforehand when we were forming the budget, we have to have a public process for recognizing that revenue and then directing it toward the project. And so if usually that happens during the annual budget process, but if we had a huge donation and we wanted to be able to be authorized to spend that money, we would have to have a supplemental budget process followed to recognize that revenue and give staff the authority to spend it. Because we only have the authority to spend what is in the adopted budget, regardless of what money actually comes in. And that's something that's a little bit weird. You know, in your own family, for your own family budget, and you have a bonus come in from your employment, you're allowed to spend that, you know, as soon as you talk it over with your significant other, and there's no problem. But with the city, we have to recognize it. We have to go through a public process saying, hey, we got this money now. Can we please spend it? And make sure that people have a chance to weigh in on that. Requests for changes to a project must fit within the adopted or supplemental budget. So just like with donations, we have to have the authority to spend them. Any changes to a project that go beyond what's budgeted, that would have to go through that same process to adjust the budget and adjust the spending authority for that project.
So,
Now-
so how does Dave offering to buy the other trees, how does that apply to this?
How does that apply? So there was a request for more trees, right? So let's put it more hypothetical.
It was the other way around. The trees were reduced from what we wanted because at the time, and this was my mistake in the email I sent you, just in the total explanation. At the time, we were on a budget freeze or a spending freeze. We had approval to use the amount of money that was within the grant, which was done. In the meeting, it was determined that it was going to be a change and we wanted to go with 2 trees inside the dog park instead of 1, which changed the available balance of the budget, of the grant, which reduced the number of trees we could put on the outside of the park.
Okay.
So when we stood there and looked at that, we just said it would have looked better if we had all the trees all the way down.
Right.
And Dave simply said, well, I'll just buy those.
So
That's the,
yeah, so there's a couple let's unpack that a little bit. There's a couple different issues going on there.
sure.
One, if somebody wants to buy materials and donate those materials for the city, those are materials, not funding. And so we don't have to recognize the value of those materials and have a supplemental budget to allow us to use them. Those have been donated to the city. Now, as long as they're donated to a project that we're already doing, because, all right, if somebody goes and says, I'm going to donate a bunch of trees for Sankey Park because I don't think there are enough trees there. Well, that's a problem because you're affecting maintenance of the park. You're affecting staff time to be able to plant some trees. May not even be the right time of year to plant the trees. We may not have irrigation. There's all sorts of stuff and it can be a mess. And so we're not necessarily going to say, yeah, we'll take all the trees you want to give us. When it's a donation for a project that we already have going, like this exact situation, if it's something that we already have staff working on, I don't think there's anything wrong with receiving that donation in material because we don't have to recognize the funding. And so that part of it, I think, is fine, as long as it's within the project that if it's something that adds a whole bunch more staff time to a project, then that's an issue. But if it's something that already fits within the existing project that we've already budgeted and planned for, then it's okay. It would be best to clear that with the department head who's over the people doing the work and making sure that they have the capacity to plant additional trees, because that I don't want to step on Greg's toes and just tell his staff immediately that, yeah, you're going to plant 50 more trees. We got to make sure that there's a process for following that, make sure they have the capacity to do it.
So I have a question, though. I could be wrong, and correct me, please. But Angela, didn't you say that even a donation, you had to know about it first?
If someone wants to donate something, it just needs to come through staff to make sure, as Blair said, that we allocate it in the right place and that something like the trees, when I said hold off for a minute because we needed to run through, because the former meeting, we did reduce the tree amount. You went out and measured it, so I needed to make sure that it still followed under, the rules. The Public Works Department had the capacity to put more trees in. So it doesn't usually take a long time, but it is something that you need to make staff aware of, make sure that everybody that's involved is, and usually, like I said, it's not a huge deal, but it has to follow within the project. And this happened to follow within the project, but before we take that step to order the trees this time, we just needed to make sure that the directors knew about it and that it was okay to go ahead.
So
I don't even have the authority to say that, so I've got to go to them. So
I think we did that close to correct then, because I did communicate with Blair, and I communicated with Dominic. I didn't communicate with Greg on it.
so
I don't think I did anyway.
Ideally, this is the way it should operate. You have a project, a capital improvement project that is in the budget, and there is a budgeted amount for that project, and that budgeted amount is based on the assumption that either we will go through a procurement process to have a company come in and build the improvement or plant the trees or whatever, or it's under the assumption that we will have our staff do the work, right? So that gets budgeted as part of the annual budget process or through a supplemental budget. Once it gets to that point, there should be a plan for specifically what is going to be involved in that project. And city staff should have that plan and be working under that plan of this is what's going to be planted where, this is where a path is going to go, etc. And because the budget is all based on that. Now, if there are changes to that plan that need to be made, that needs to go through department heads to determine, does this fit within the budget that I've got the authority to spend on, and does it fit with the staff and resources that I have already assigned to this project? And if it does fit, then great, it can go through that process and be added to the project. If it's something that increases the scope of the project and there's not funding within the existing budget for it, or there's not enough resources with the staff time to do it, then it's more likely that increase would be rejected. Or you might say, that's something to hold off and do next year, or that's something that needs to be wrapped into a different project so that I have the ability to do it. And so that's why department heads need to keep an eye on these things, and it has to go through staff to make sure that this is not going to throw off the budget and be within our capabilities of finishing the project.
Blair, can I add to that a little?
Yeah.
So one thing that a lot of committee members, and not just this committee, don't take into account is budget also means staff time. Our hourly wages count as budget. So Public Works, it's their staff time that also goes into the budget. So it's not just buying the trees but it's also their time, materials, fuel for the rigs, that type of thing. So when we talk about budget, keep that in the back of your head, that it's not just the materials that we're using in this group to go plant trees and put playgrounds in, it's also staff time.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to bring that up because I don't think a lot of times that is, people are aware of that. When we speak of budget, that's also included in the budget. So
I would bet this committee is fully aware of that, because we've been told that several times, that we don't have engineering time to develop this. Public Works, and we've identified Public Works as swamped with the work that they're doing. So,
and sometimes these changes come through staff. Sometimes it's us looking at a project and thinking, well, we didn't anticipate this when we began, and this change really should be done to make this more effective. Do we have the money? Do we have the staff time to do it? And we discuss that internally to make sure that it happens. So it's not just the Park and Street Committee seeing changes that may be necessary. It's, we see them too. We just have to make sure that we follow a process to whether we do them or not.
sure.
Because sometimes there's just not the time available for that. So in the most recent example with the offer to donate trees, the main thing we need to know is, does this add to staff time? Is it within the budget for budgeted staff time, not necessarily the money that we have to spend on trees? and that kind of thing. That needs to be reviewed, and then we can say, yeah, if you want to donate some trees, go for it. Because we can handle it.
Like I said, I think the only thing we missed was I didn't ask Greg, I asked Dominic. I just assumed Dominic was directly in charge of the day-to-day role of those people and could answer whether that was available or not. So,
And that's basically staff's responsibility to make sure you're aware of that, and because we do have staff training where because in the past there have been times when different city officials have been on site and have made what seemed to be direction to staff, and a lot, it's human nature to want to please people. It's human nature to want to do a good job. And so it's not unusual for a staff member to run with something like that. But we need to constantly make sure people are aware of what is the proper line of authority for how this is to be done. And just because a city official says, go for it, doesn't mean that you should go ahead and do it. You need to check in with your supervisor, with your department head, make sure. And that's the same thing if I'm having a conversation with Dominic about what should be done. Dominic's not in my department. I don't have the authority to tell him what to do on a specific project. Usually he'll say something like, I've cleared this with Greg, what do you think? And I'll say, yeah, if Greg's okay with it, I'm okay with it. And we make sure that we're at least, checking all the boxes to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on.
Well, and to add to that too, we actually are working on an internal donation process where we're making sure that everything is going through, and most of them need to go through me too. So that's in order to make sure that, Public Works is ready and the various departments that are all going to be involved, because sometimes we'll even need to have, we wouldn't in the case of the trees, but we might even need to have PD involved and other items. So that's kind of, there has to be a little bit more of internal oversight for us to be able to work together to make sure that these projects go through. And as Blair stated, the trees being donated as materials really weren't as large of a donation or requirements of staff time as some of the other projects. But if somebody wanted to donate other larger projects, it could actually be something that even if they were paying for all of the materials, that we may still not be able to move forward because we don't have the staff time.
Right. It's kind of like if you had somebody who wanted to donate, a skate park, for example, said, I'm willing to pay for a skate park and put it in this spot. I'll pay for it. Okay, well, do we have the land? Do we have the staff time? Do we have the engineering? Is this something that's recognized in a planning document that takes priority over other things? Are we allowed to skip over or pass over the BMX park in order to put this skate park in because somebody gave us money for it? Those are things that need to be analyzed to make sure that we can handle that donation. And we want to accept donations. We want to encourage people investing in their community. But we also need to make sure that it's not at the detriment of existing services or resources.
I do want to state for the record that we love donations.
Yes, please.
Yes.
All right, any other questions on budget?
Actually, sorry, one more thing. So, because what all started this was obviously the development of a new dog park. And so that was very clearly a donation.
Yep.
And that was something you all brought to us for our ideas a long time ago.
Yep.
And
Yep.
But isn't there another donation item for something?
Yes, there was some
here?
items that were going to be donated for next
Yeah.
door here, and that has been kind of on hold due to initially, I believe it was for because of supply chain issues,
Mhm.
and then costs increases because
Yeah.
the donor was going to actually buy the equipment and then donate the equipment, and that has kind of fallen through to some degree. I need to actually touch base with the donor and see where they are, because the last time I talked to the donor, there was still on hold, waiting for some. Because for a while, I think some suppliers were adding, what do they call that fee? So they basically were adding a fee for just because of supply chain constraints,
Yeah.
and the donor was waiting for the supplier to stop charging that fee.
Makes sense.
And
Yep.
so we'll
But
see
that
where it goes.
concept is still there because it was brought to us, discussed here, and I'm sorry, I don't remember when, it's probably in our meeting minutes. We said, yeah, that's a plausible idea and we're supportive of it. And
Right.
when the time comes, then it'll be, let's go walk around. Well, we've already walked around actually.
And,
out there.
and that's one of the things that
Yeah.
we're trying to address in this,
Yeah.
this donation document that internal document that Kelsey mentioned is eventually we have our own internal process, and then we're gonna have basically a public document of, so you want to donate, here's what can
Yeah.
happen. And really part of the review process should be not just staff capacity and budget, but how does this fit in with our adopted parks plan? Because if the majority of the public during that process says we want the BMX track to continue, and then we have a donor that says, no, I want to put a skate park right in that same spot, well, that's a conflict, and we need to make sure that we find some way around that, and we're not going to accept a donation that goes against everybody else in the community. That's an extreme example, but there should be a review to make sure there's compatibility in these uses.
So if we take it one step further and we look at the community center / pavilion, so we were part of the decision making to say, yeah, we agree with Public Works, the old one is rotten, it can't be restored. It's a
The old
liability.
bandstand, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
take it down. But our obligation is, well, we need to,
Replace it.
make good on that we're
Mhm.
going to do something new, different, an improvement, because
Yep.
that was such a highlight of the park. And so whether we accomplish it through another grant down the road, fundraising, donations, or some mix of the three, I think that's kind of where we're
Right.
at
So-
on that process.
So that's something that when it comes to donations, I don't think there's any, all the public conversations have been that we want that facility to be replaced. And there's not anything else planned for that general
area.
vicinity. And so there's no conflict.
Yep.
And if we had a donor coming in saying, I'm going to pay for it, I think we'd be all over that. We'd still look at staff time and look at what
Yeah.
engineering would be necessary and all that, make sure that we could do it. But it's very likely that we could start a donation campaign now
Mhm.
for that structure. And because eventually, yes, we want it replaced. And it's been made clear in multiple meetings,
Yeah.
multiple documents.
So we've kind of run through that process, I'd say, correctly with
Mhm.
our use of public meeting and our use of time standing
Yep.
out there, probably not in full quorum, but just
Mhm.
to say, well, it was here. Does it go back here? Does it
Yeah.
come forward? Does it
You
go back?
shifted a little bit.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the nitty gritty details, which
Yep.
will come out in a formal engineering process when we get
Sure.
to that. Okay, that's
which
good.
which actually brings us on to procurement,
Yeah.
because that's a big part of it also.
$5,000, I know that's
Yeah.
the magic number.
So purchasing decisions are made by department directors based on the adopted budget and based on direction from the city manager. The purchasing process depends on the amount being spent. If it's under $5,000, the city spends funds however it sees fit to accomplish its task. If it's between $5,000 and $25,000, the city must obtain at least 3 competitive quotes. And that can be a fairly informal process, but it just has to have something that is clear that the vendor is going to charge that amount. If it's over $25,000, the city must solicit bids through a formal process such as an advertised request for proposals. And I believe we're about to start a new procurement system that may simplify this process further or may add some flexibility. And if Kelsey, if you want to give a recap on that. You're welcome
Sure. So we actually are going to start a new procurement system that is a national system, and we will have templates, and it'll be a much easier way to go through this. It'll also provide for hopefully a lot more competition, as this will get out to a lot more contractors and consultants and developers. We are also working on updating these thresholds to slightly higher amounts. So we're hoping that comes through within about the next month or so. If it does, we will let everybody know. But for now, please keep these thresholds in mind.
And so the main reason, I guess the most recent example of this is the discussion about the bandstand. And so we've already talked about how there were a couple folks that went to visit a potential vendor that constructs things that we like, that could fit the bill. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with researching firms and looking at what's out there and available. What has to be done, though, is the procurement process still needs to be followed. So if we see stuff that we like, that's great. We can include that, and if it's something, we can take note. Hey, is it under $5,000? Okay, well, if we have the budget, we can go ahead and buy it. Is it $5,000 to $25,000? Okay, we see something we like. We got to find some competitors for that same kind of product and see what they would charge, and just get a couple more so that we can make sure that we're following the process. And is it something that's going to be over 25,000, which that kind of structure definitely would be? Well, then what we can do is we can tell the vendor, look, we've got to go through our procurement process. We would love to include information about your product in our RFP. And we can say, we want it to have this particular look, or we want it to be made of these materials, or we want it to be engineered to have this capacity. We can put this document out there and say, this is what we're interested in, this type of structure. And then the whole point of that is to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. And that way you can have that sent out to multiple, published publicly, and multiple firms have the opportunity to say, yeah, that fits the product that I've got. This is what I can offer, or I can build one that it matches that same thing as my competitor. Maybe they can do it at a better price. But it's really to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to chime in on it.
So when Wally presented that to City Council, then that was with one organization. So actually, then you have to have a couple more to.
So what was presented to council was the general vision for the structure, right? And what council basically said is, yeah, we like where you're going with this. We like the overall idea and the vision for it. And so the next step for that is actually budgeting it. So that could be through a donation campaign, or through a grant, or finding city funding for it, or some combination of those three. And once the funding is identified, then you say, okay, let's put out a request for proposals to say, we want a structure this size, this tall, with this type of look, and you advertise it, and to either, for somebody to build it for you, or to, if it's a prefab job, install it or something like that.
But he brought, what it looked like from a different company. I mean, from a company.
Right.
Okay.
And so that general vision was accepted, but that was not a purchasing decision made by the council.
And that's why
because the council,
that's why I had the renderings done, so it wasn't
yeah,
that particular building, something similar to this.
Sure. Because if the quote from that company had been taken to the council, and the council asked, will you approve spending this and buying this? And if the council said yes, that would be a violation of our own procurement law and state law. And it really, we'd probably get sued pretty quick if there was some other firm that thought they could do it for the same price or better. So
they liked the look.
yes.
Okay.
So with the RFP that you gave us last month, that was the RFP for the master.
Oh, the park system master plan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you went RFP because you're assuming it would be over 25.
Well, the grant we received for that was 30,000, and then our match is 20 for a total budget of $50,000.
So it's over it.
So
when those come in, what do you all use as a point system or a grading system to evaluate your RFP?
So
do you have a template? Do you?
The RFP itself includes a scoring
It does have the
criteria.
scoring. Okay.
Mhm. In the case of that particular one, unfortunately, we only received one, and so in that case, we start negotiating, and I hope they're not listening, because they don't know that they're the only one.
You can reject it and start over, but
This is true. This is
You-
true.
you-
So we're in the negotiation
Yeah.
process now, and it's too bad. I wish we had received more.
Yeah.
But that's the way it goes.
you should also have the opportunity to do sole source vendor. So if there's a really particular piece of equipment and there's only one company that makes it.
Right.
Do you have that option? in
There
your
is
toolbox?
a process, and I didn't go for
Yeah.
to go over that here because it is a little bit more detail and more
Yeah.
complex than for the purposes of this training. But there is a possibility of sole source.
Okay.
Usually, you have to have some findings,
Yeah.
research that backs you up and says, yeah, nobody else does
Yeah.
this. We recently did a sole source procurement with a company for converting LED streetlights, and that reasons for that is that it is actually Pacific Power's streetlights that are being upgraded. The city pays for them. We pay for them on a monthly basis, but Pacific Power owns the lights, and so it's yeah.
You rent the lights.
Right. Yeah. Most of our streetlights we do not own. They actually they've been put in by Pacific Power, and we pay the bill every month.
Is that true for most cities?
Actually, it's not unusual. There's a
Not
lot of
unusual.
cities that
Okay.
do that, and so yeah, it's surprising. But in that case, though, it makes it kind of an interesting thing because we're paying for upgrading those. Pacific Power only upgrades them when they need to, and so we are stuck with the rate for the conventional lights until they are upgraded to LED.
Mhm.
Well, there's a separate company that has a relationship with Pacific Power that goes through and converts those, and they finance it, and they take the payment for that service out of the savings from the rate difference. And so the city doesn't directly pay for it. Anyway, it's a whole thing.
Interesting.
So it's interesting. But my point is that was a sole source procurement because they're the only company that does that.
Yeah.
There was no other choice at all. And so that enabled us to do a sole source. If there's something very specific parks wise that we want to do that only one company
Yeah.
does, then we can look at that. It's unlikely.
It would be rare,
It
I
would be
would
very
think,
rare.
unless it's really a specific piece of playground equipment that only one person does.
I mean,
but yeah,
If there was work on Weddell Bridge and it was very specific historical artifact type work that
Yeah.
nobody else does, then I can see something
Yeah.
like that. But
Okay.
but even that, there's enough people that work on bridges that we could
Yeah.
find somebody.
good.
All right, and that's it.
Whoa.
Good. No,
So-
that was good.
Thank you for the questions, and I hope I didn't bore you too much.
That was good.
And so now it is back to your meeting.
Okay, so now we can go back to old business. Northside Park Arbor Day celebration, draft flyer. I already let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah.
Sorry,
well,
I got ahead of myself.
No, and the times on here, so I just took what we did. Well, last year actually we did it later.
Yeah,
However, I didn't know what time. I hadn't checked with the Jamboree yet. So I just came up with 11. I figured we needed to start earlier than we did last year, but I didn't
Yep.
know exactly what time. So this is just a draft. I can make changes to it, and then we'll be putting it out. But I just wanted to give you the overall look. I pretty
Yeah.
much kept the same format as last year, just added to it. So if there's any changes, let me know and I'll.
10 to 2.
Okay.
And then Nancy's been
What?
given the go-ahead with coordinating it with Mr.
Peggy.
Huh?
I just go through Peggy,
Okay, whomever.
office manager.
That's yours. And then I think also there's a possible dog show that day. Is that correct? Was that, who talked about the
You-
person that,
So you all brought up Connie about
Oh, yeah.
possibly somebody might touch base with her about doing a dog show there. So
Yeah.
that's what I have on the minutes is that someone was,
Yeah.
I don't know specifically.
that
I'll have to
something
go back
With
and listen
with
to it.
us
We
at
want.
the park.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, do you know her?
Yeah, I
I
know.
do.
She used to work for the city. I
Okay,
know her.
So can you just continue
Bosco
on with
got
that?
training from her.
Yep.
Yeah, again. Call Connie, okay.
And then don't tell anybody here, just Angela, what you find out.
Yeah. And so it's more of a demonstration, I think is how we describe it, a demonstration of, it could be everything from appropriate dog park etiquette. That might actually be a very good one. Plus she could set up her agility equipment and people can see the potential of what you can do in a dog park. Although we've seen lots of people using the dog park. I think they're doing pretty good. Apparently the doggy waste bags are being used, hopefully, so.
And then once we get that information, the corrections to you, if Connie's going to do it, then you're going to make these so we can put them up around town.
Yes, I will make copies of them for you. We're also going to be sending an ad to the New Era, and we'll be putting it on our Facebook page. We won't do that till it gets a little bit closer to
Right.
the time.
Yeah.
But if you have any changes, I would say get them to me. I would say by the 1st of March. And then that way I can get everything ready to go and get things printed off.
So in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The year's flying. Got to make sure
So I do have
that's
a,
clear. We got 2 weeks to figure it out.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So I did have a question about the parking at the park,
Which part?
our side,
The Arbor Day Celebration Park.
North side.
because we had talked about it before. I don't know if it was in this meeting or when we're sitting around talking, I don't know, but something about more parking there.
I know you guys are working on the park in preparation for the event, but there won't be any additional parking set up by then, correct? Yeah, so people will have to park up near the tennis court. There's straight in parking and then street parking on both sides of the street.
So as a group, a kid in Public Works, we met to look specifically at the parking, and our staff engineer has developed a plan and has some ideas. But we also need to do some storm drain work. If you've seen the roads on
Yeah.
Redwood, and I think what's the next one over Poplar, they're really in bad shape.
Yep.
And so we have to put some storm drain pipe in. So we've already met and we're trying to see the feasibility of that. But we need to do that work, or at least get that water off that area, or any work that we do is just going to get destroyed because of standing water. So as we're working through those things, we're still going to try to figure out how that parking is going to look. I think the original thought is we would have a couple of parking spots between the trees. We're not sure that's going to work. I think we do too much damage to the trees as well. So as we work through those, maybe we have this discussion again next meeting. Allow Blair and myself to kind of work through those things. But we've kind of got a couple of hurdles in front of us that is just a little bit more than, doing a little bit of pavement and doing some lining and stuff like that. So
Do you think, I know this is ridiculous question, as I've learned by how fast things happen, just because of all the processes that it requires. But is there any chance that we would have that figured out before the Arbor Day event? Like what the parking might look like, so we could display that, so when people don't walk up and start complaining about the street and the parking, we say, here's the plan going forward. That's middle of April.
Yeah, Joe has a plan, and it shows a parking lot to the south of the bathroom,
Sure.
and that where the RV used to be.
Okay. I
These
just
are-
think that would be good if we had that lined out to show, hey, we're going to do this.
And again, right, we have a concept, but there's still some things
Yeah.
that's in front of us that's not going to make us do it right away.
Right.
Yeah.
and so until we work out those things.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of communication on everybody's favorite Facebook about that street area and what's happened down there after the park was put in. So I thought it would be nice if we would show that hey, there's a, and it's not for us, it's for the city-wise, there's a plan.
There's a few roads on that side, south of or I guess north of the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
that we spend a lot of time on. We get a lot of complaints, and we would love nothing more to fix everything.
Oh, I know.
But right now with our transportation funds, we're kind of being strategic in how we spend those. But with that said, we're already looking at some storm drain money that we have to make some improvements. We just need to make sure that the falls are going to be there. We're going to try to bring the flow back to 12th Street. That may not be possible. So we need to work through how we're going to do that. Does it go down the park and tie into Poplar or somewhere else? And so we need to work through those things.
Sure. Thank you.
So are we also going to have our banner and different things like that we've requested for showing who we are?
So with Lena's help, we put in the grant, and thank you, Lena, for answering the questions while I was gone. We're just kind of waiting on the funding. As soon as I get some word, I've already talked to Gateway Imprints, and they can get it done. And so hopefully we'll find out soon. I haven't looked to find out exactly when they announce that, which I need to do this week. And then we'll get moving on it. I've been looking at materials again, thanks to Lena. She sent me some links to some different materials that we can have. I'll be printing more of our flyers, our park flyers, getting those done because we have none right now. And so I need to get
Brochures?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
yeah. And so
Feel free to bring those next month and we'll fold them again.
I was going to bring you some this month. Unfortunately, we got new printers and they're not printing properly to fold
Oh,
them
no.
properly. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to call the printer company today to see if there's another setting, and if not, we might send them out to get printed. So that was my plan. I was going to hand you all a bunch of work. So not this time though. But yes, so we will be having a bunch of those, and we'll try to get some other, handouts for kids and different things that you guys have brought to me, and I'll try to get those done. So
I know we can still talk about it next month, but I know last year we had snacks at the park. Maybe since it's a dog park, maybe we can find somebody that wants to donate dog snacks.
It'd be fun.
Somebody in town, like Gary. Where's another dog store? Sandy, I'm not. Yeah, Feed and Seed. Want me to ask?
We should.
I don't know the vet too, so.
Or the vet?
Oh,
Yeah.
Sweet Home Vet,
Sweet
yeah.
Home Vet would be great to include.
Yeah,
So
okay.
Angela, you take a look in the we have two totes. We have the overflow tote and then the tote that we grab and go to meetings. There should be masters of all the coloring sheets and things in there, so that we can just run them through the printer.
I actually went through it a couple of weeks ago because I had to still
Maps.
the brochures.
Yeah.
I had to steal the brochures out of there because we didn't have any more. So I will pull those out as it gets a little bit
Okay.
closer and start getting those done. So
I think everything else is well stocked. One of the requirements of the grant was doing education information on tree, and I know there's a lot of how to plant a tree handouts and where to place a tree. So we have a lot of that information. So to meet our requirements of the grant, we should be fine. So really, it's a matter of, we've all done booths, things you hand out to kids, stickers, pencils, things that are just fun for little ones.
So did you want me to ask the vet for
Yes.
dog treats?
Yes.
Okay.
I will let you run with Arbor Day event planning.
Yeah.
and
Together.
And then
Nancy,
just let
Yes.
Angela know whatever you
Um,
find out.
I would also ask them if they just want to have a representative there to represent the vet. Maybe have a
Actually,
booth or
That
something.
would be
good.
fun.
Yeah, just to advertise their services.
Okay.
That would be fun. So one more thing. So I want to thank Deborah for helping pot up our giveaway plants. They ran out of red columbines before I ordered, so I substituted with more dogwood trees and dwarf checker mallow, which is a short perennial. So I think should have about 30 plants for giveaways. Plus, if you all want to glean things from your yard, we can pot up other things. I've got a few flowers and iris and other things that need divided. So we'll have plenty of appropriate plants for people that live in the city, rather than giving everybody a Doug fir tree, which is probably not right for city lots. So, but thank you, Deborah, for doing that before the rains came that day.
You're welcome.
Did you want the beautification committee to maybe give us some plants?
They talked about that group could also glean from their gardens, and we just need to. I can talk to Patty and let her know, since Bob's not here, let her know that we decided on a time, because they wanted to come too, and they could talk about their works. It'd be a nice collaboration.
Are we good on Arbor Day?
Oh, wait, sorry. So the
Good.
formal part of it, and I think you did this last year, was you formally did the proclamation at the event.
Yes.
So you can do that again to kick it off. You probably need to do a formal one at a council meeting,
Mhm.
as in years past, but when we do it out in the open air. It's just fun to.
Yeah, there's a form that I get from Tree City USA that has the
proclamation.
mayor signs, and
Mhm.
so I will get that. Which thank you for reminding me.
Yeah,
I need to
I
get that on. I
Yeah.
need to get that on the agenda. So,
Yeah.
okay.
And then you guys, you invite the council and of course, city staff to be there. Who's doing those papers?
And if the mayor would like to do the proclamation at the park, I'm perfectly happy with her. She was at our last year's Arbor Day celebration. And we have a picture of her working. It's good.
I wonder
So,
how many people are going to bring their dogs?
Well,
so the
bad idea.
recognition stone for Sankey Park donations, did you get any word back on that?
So she sent me another email. Well, I sent her an email and then she sent me one back. I'm still waiting for a quote. I did get the dimensions to Sean and Dominic, just so they had the dimensions. So I got a response for her on Monday that she's working on it and she'll get it back to me. So we asked her for a quote with all of the names, with the city logo, without the organ that it's best, and
Sure.
then all of the names without the logo, so we could see what the difference is. And as of today, I have not gotten an answer back from her. So I told her that possibly by the end of the week would be good. So I don't know.
But the stone is still available,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still available.
That was the one I was worried about because it was a overstock item, I think.
Something like, yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly the reason, but
Right.
yes, it is still available. I'm just waiting for quotes of getting it carved
Okay,
at this point.
thank you.
Mhm.
Greg, did you get anything back from the bridge? No, not yet. Okay,
I sent an email out after our last meeting and I had no response.
okay.
So I'm not quite sure what's going on, why we're not getting the report, why we're not getting a response, but we'll try to follow up again.
Sure. And one other question, because I did bring up the Dallenberg Bridge. We had talked about moving it temporary location. Is that, we're just waiting till summer? Has any talk about that been
We
done? or-
haven't discussed it internally. I don't know if you have, Blair.
I think there was some people that were interested in moving it.
Well, we talked about at one of our meetings to move it over.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and that's still the plan. My understanding is that the people who were, there's an opportunity to get it moved without much cost to the city. And the timing of it is the group that wanted to do that wanted to be able to, I think, use it as a
Photo
float
op,
for the
Parade thing, right?
parade
for
and
the
photo op, yeah.
Parade.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's an even trade for free movement of the bridge. So,
Okay, I was just bringing it up because it sits in the back of my head that was still out there.
There is somebody that does have a little bridge that they take in the parade. This is a long time ago, but I remember seeing it. I don't know which community has it. They have a bridge.
So one other thing that I didn't talk to anybody else about is the ivy removal. So we talked about removing what needed to be done to remove it up on the north side of Sankey Park. And City Works has informed me that's something we can do later on, but they are extremely focused on getting ready for Arbor Day. So we'll talk about that probably in the April meeting, about when would be a good time for us to assist in removal of said ivy up there. Just so
Thank you,
that-
Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. I just want to make sure that wasn't missed. Anybody have any extra items? We're down to a couple minutes.
I just want to add one more, looking back at the minutes, it's little, so I know we've been here a long time. So Greg had said something about when the trees are cut down, what you guys do with them. So did we ever think that it would be an opportunity for the Parks Board to earn some money?
I didn't talk to anybody, but there was some communication
Right.
about that. And I think
It's
we're
okay,
going
Greg.
to,
Okay,
He'll
Wally.
talk to himself.
yeah, we're going to have a pause on that for right now.
Okay. Well, the only reason I said that is because maybe at the Arbor Day, we could have opportunity, if you want to buy a cord of wood, help the Parks Board.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Not at this point in time.
okay.
Any others? I call this meeting adjourned.
Good job. Thank you.
Wow. We're off the record, huh?
Thank you,
Y'all have a
Deb.
good day.